Hey, everybody, good evening. Still waiting for Wayne to log in here. I was really tardy tonight and sending him the link. I just sent it about a minute ago. I'm sorry, Wayne. I didn't mean to put any pressure on you. I was having too much fun today. Finally gotten caught up with everything on my honey-do list. When you retire, you have to learn how to be retired. I found that out. And at first, it was nuts because people kept calling me, wanting me to do things, not do them, and I ran out of time. Then I got into this mode where everything around the house I've been putting off for 30 years needed doing, and so I did all that. And I finally got caught up with everything just this week. I'm kind of in a mode now where everything's kind of caught up, and so I'm going to ride my motorcycle tomorrow. I'm going to go ride this weekend, and I've been talking to some of these guys that have been out sawing some trail, and I think I'm going to go up and maybe work on the Divide Trail. If Chad and those guys don't get that done, that seems to be a problem area, some of that day six stuff. So I think I'm going to head up there this weekend. Let me see if yeah, Wayne's still trying to log in here. We'll wait until we get him in just a minute. I see that Jeffrey Jensen's in the room. My man, how you doing? And Jim Spooner's in the room. Sawsalot, first team of the year. Let's give it up for that guy. Uh, I'm glad that Jeff and Jim are both in the room at the same time. I was going to try to get Jeff to come in on Saturday when Jim finished, because Jeff was the last guy to be the first person of the year to make it through as a soloist, and that's a considerable feat. And I kind of wanted to have Jeffrey be able to be in the room to be able to help congratulate Jim. But it's a really awesome thing to be first through as a soloist, especially this year when there were so many challenges, so many fires, so many reroutes. And I got to tell you, I talked to Jim quite a bit, but he knew what to do. He always had maps with him, and he was really good. There's Wayne. He was really, really good. There he is. I'll bring in just a minute, partner. So he was good at navigation and being able to figure out these reroutes on the fly and everything. And all I did was verify that I thought his choices were good. We talked about how we could replace points that he'd lost, but he did all the navigation by himself, and I think that's tremendous. And I'm going to have Jim on in a couple of weeks. He needs some time to decompress and think about it a little bit, because it's a lot to process when you're done. And sometimes I don't really understand what happened for weeks after something like this. Today is the 40th anniversary of one of the first big kick-ass adventures I ever had. 40 years ago today, I summited my first diamond route in Colorado. And I was this dumb kid from Kentucky that was too stupid to know that you're not supposed to just go to Colorado and climb diamond routes. And my friends that lived in Colorado, I think, gave me like a 1 in 10 chance of surviving the whole thing. And we went up there, and it rained and snowed, and it was just horrible. It was basically winter conditions, or spring conditions at the very least. And we did a route called Yellow Wall in the Diamond. And we were just too dumb to know that you're not supposed to go out and just pick that stuff off. And so 40 years ago today, we summited. And it was brutal. The last day, the ropes were verglassed into the rock. And I remember taking a big, like a 60-foot backward swan dive off the top of the diamond. And it took me years to really process what had happened there. So, Tour of Idaho, by the way, I think is just as hard and just as adventurous as that kind of stuff. And I think it's going to take Jim a while to, sit down and kind of process everything that happened. So I'm going to give him a couple weeks, and we'll bring him on a little later in the year. But his trip gets absolutely 3 stars behind his name and his number, because being able to solve as many problems as he had to solve is something that's just incredibly unique. And I'm stoked, and everybody else is stoked too. I talked to all the tour vets while he was out there, and everybody's going, yeah, this is a trip for the ages. There was one day, and it was his day 8, when all of a sudden, the fire closures are way further to the west along the Lolo motorway than we thought there'd be, because there's little fires burning up there everywhere. There's the big fires, but there's little spot fires that pop up, and they close the roads. So all of a sudden, Windy Ridge, Windy Bill, at least from the south, is not accessible to him. So how are you going to make that stuff up? He's got a couple of extra CPs in his pocket from some riding he'd done on day 6 and day 5, but nonetheless, you still got to make that up. That's an awful lot of trail you're going to miss. And we talked back and forth through the PLB, and he had a plan, and I looked at it and I go, wow, I did that once, but it's been like 15, 16 years ago. I have no idea if that trail ever gets sawed. And it's a long way in the middle of nowhere to get to the Weatis workstation to find out that single track that takes you north to 250, the Pierce Road, Pierce Superior Road. What if it's not sawed? You're in the middle of nowhere and there's no easy way out of there. So it was quite adventurous what he did. I mean, he went in there and it's an awful lot of faith, and the guy is really tired because you're getting beat to death. He had to ride the anthill switchbacks that morning. He knew he was going to be spending the night out that night, and it was just awesome. That's what the Tour of Idaho is all about. If the trails are all sawed, there's no fires or anything like that, you still did good if you got all the way through it. But when you have as many challenges as this guy did, and you're still able to pull it off, and you're the first rider through for the year, 2 weeks earlier than I recommend you give it a shot, good on you, Jim Spooner. So a couple of announcements. Before we get started tonight, I want to bring in Wayne and let him talk about his trip and hand the microphone over to him for a while. The floodgates start to open this week. We've got a team that's coming in. I think their first day is Wednesday. Adults in the room. I know one of those guys really well, and I'm looking forward to seeing them hopefully Wednesday night here. Then after that, I think we've got a whole. I think we got maybe a team starting on Monday and a couple teams starting on Tuesday. I'll have to go back and look at the calendar, but the floodgates start to open after that. It's like teams every day for a long time. So I'll be here this week up until Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. I'm going to go up probably to North Fork and saw some of that day 6 stuff. I know there's still some stuff that needs working on. Jim rode some trails where he had to do some log hopping and stuff, and I'm going to go and clean that stuff up. If the CDT needs some attention, I'll go up and I'll work on that. So I'm going to go up and do my part and saw some trails this weekend, which means I won't be back here until probably Tuesday morning. But I think I looked at the calendar earlier, and I might miss a team on Monday night, but I'll still be around Tuesday for your day off in Pocatello. We'll get back here as early as we can on Tuesday, so that shouldn't be a problem. What else? I made a video earlier this week. I think that it's important that I reiterate this. I've kind of talked about it in Riders Meetings a little bit, and it's something that I talk about in the stuff you're supposed to read. You should not be reaching out to these people that are out on the tour for any reason, to congratulate them, to pat them on the back, to give them advice, to do any of that kind of stuff. Now, it hasn't been a big problem so far this year. There's only been one team. Sometimes people get too excited. It doesn't generally come from a bad place. It comes from a good place. You're excited about what's going on, and you can't help yourself. You reach out and you just say, hey, good job, stuff like that. Mostly, I think they don't want to hear that. When I'm out riding and my phone starts going off and blowing up, and I got to stop and pull it out of my pocket to see what's going on, I'm a little bit pissed. You should leave people alone that are out on the route. Now, the PMs and stuff like that, people trying to cheer them on and stuff like that, I'm going to ask you to cut that stuff out. Just let them go. There are places to do that. There are more appropriate ways to do that than for you to reach out and be sending them personal messages through Facebook and stuff like that, because their phone goes off. They don't know that it's just somebody going, woohoo. They think it might be me or something else that they need to pay attention to. So I'm going to ask you to cut that out. What I'm going to insist that you cut out is you should absolutely, under no circumstances, reach out to them through their PLB. That happened a couple of times to Sawsalot. He said he got he doesn't know who it was, but just random numbers on his PLB, and they were all messages of encouragement. But you shouldn't be doing any of that. That's the channel. That's an emergency channel. That's where, if you want to think of it, that's where the weatherman talks to the people that are out in the route, to put it in terms that maybe some of you can relate to. You don't want to get in that at all. That PLB is for the rider, myself, and the rider's family and emergency services. That is it. So the fact that I asked everybody to enable incoming text messages. That's so that I can text them and so that emergency services can text them. It's not so you can text them and say, hey, woohoo, you're doing a good job today. That's a wholly inappropriate use of the PLB. So I'm going to insist that you stop that. If I find out that people are doing that and you are a team that's showing up this year, you're going to be starting a point in the hole, because I'll take points away. And if it's somebody else, I'll boot them out of the group so you can't see links and stuff anymore. Leave that. Yeah, Sean Smith says it can also cost depending upon your plan. Everybody should know better than that, but just in case you don't, do not click that button to send a person a text message through their PLB. That is a completely inappropriate use of a PLB, okay? And please cut back on the Facebook PMs and stuff like that. They just don't need to hear it. You can congratulate them when it's done. Every once in a while, I put up a post on Facebook that I don't moderate. I don't want you putting comments in their threads because I want to keep it clean so that anybody can look down through there and see all the challenge points and stuff like that. And they can see it too. Plus, what happens is it starts to get off topic. The comments start to wander and it ends up being a mess. But usually I post other things that aren't their thread. You can get on there and congratulate them if you want to. And always at the end, there's an interview. You can congratulate them there. Again, I know that those congratulatory messages and, encouraging people comes from a good place. But as a rider myself, I can tell you that it's irritating as hell when you're out riding and you can hear the phone going ding, ding, ding every time it gets into cell phone range, because you don't know if that's something that you really need to look at or not. So leave those people alone. And then finally, leaving them alone also means when they roll into Chalice or they roll into North Fork or something like that, you shouldn't be waiting for them outside of their room, or you shouldn't be waiting for them in the restaurant or something like that. Leave people alone. Now, one thing that's really cool is like when they roll through Sun Valley, Jensen and those guys are up there holding up signs going, woohoo, that kind of stuff is cool. But you got to be really careful about getting involved in what's going on with these riders. We've had a rider DQ before because he got some help from somebody, and the person that was helping him didn't think they were doing anything wrong. But the whole idea behind this thing is that you're supposed to basically proceed on your own. And it's really, if you decide that you want to run up to North Fork because you know this team is coming in and you want to buy them dinner or something like that, you are running the risk of crossing that line where all of a sudden, you did something you shouldn't have done. You might give them some information about a trail that they didn't already know. It's best just to stay out of it. It makes it easier for them. It makes it a lot easier for me. And it keeps you from inadvertently doing something. So leave people alone that are out in the route. Plenty of time to congratulate them later on. And just try to stay away. I know it's tough sometimes. I know that, and again, I really like what the Sun Valley guys do, stand by the side of the road and hold up signs. That's awesome. If you're in Pocatello or something like that, when they're rolling off Chinese Peak, there's nothing wrong with waving them as they go by and stuff like that. But you got to be really careful that doesn't cross the line into something that shouldn't be happening. If it's me, I get ticked off when my wife texts me when I'm out riding because I want to ride. The people that are doing the tour are intensely focusing on what they need to do. They're trying to route find. They're trying to navigate from one waypoint to the next. They're trying to make, 1,000 decisions every minute about, do I step on this peg or this peg? Where should my weight be? Is that waypoint coming up? That's all the stuff they're processing, and they're in that mode. And every time that you reach out to them, you sort of drag them out of that a little bit. So just leave people alone. What else do I need to talk about? I'm really excited when the season kicks off the way it did with Sawsalot. That is freaking awesome. By the way, that team earned its sobriquet on day 9 when I noticed that Heller Divide Trail, I think Jim and his dad had gone in and sawed from Simmons Ridge down to where the challenge section starts, but they didn't know anything about where you come back up out of that saddle and T-Bone State Line Trail. And if you were watching as I was, that's 3 miles. The distance in there is 3 miles, and it took him damn near 2 hours. And I'm going to talk to Jim sometime tomorrow, and we're going to do a little debrief. But I don't know what combination of log hopping and sawing that was. Jim, if you want to go ahead and post it up as a comment here, I'll place it up. But it looked like it took you a long time. And that area is, if you've never been there before, that's an area that there's some burn in there. And it's actually better when you get out of the burn into the areas that haven't been burned. And it kind of goes steeply up the ridge for a while. And then it gets into this flat area. But you're thinking, well, great, I'm in this flat area. I should be able to ride around stuff. There's not side hill considerations here. And there's horrible burns. There's just stuff everywhere. It's just a mess. And I felt bad watching him, but he got through it, got the state line trail. Did not take the Jeff Jensen bait and ride down into the lake, just turned left and went to Wallace. And by the way, they were building a fire break up there in State Line Trail, so you'll have to get down off of State Line Trail and ride back up on Gold Hill Road, which is NF 50. What I'm going to do about fires, they're dynamic situations. You know, the boundaries change a lot, what's closed, what's open. Every time the wind shifts in direction or a new storm rolls through, they change the boundaries a little bit. They close different roads. I'm just going to work with teams individually as you come through, because then I'll have an idea of what's open and what's closed. So when you come through and I'm talking to you, I'll go through, this is what we're going to do in day 6. This is what we're going to do in day 7. This is what we're going to do in day 8 and day 9. That's the very best way to do it. And I'll load up waypoints for those teams, but I'm not going to do anything for the next couple of days because things could change. So the situations are fluid, and it's just best to wait. Nobody's going to be at any of those places for at least another week, so let's just wait until we have to. I'm a big one for not making decisions until I have to make them. Let's see what Jim has to say here. The burn was killer, sawing, log hopping, and building some log jumps. You and Birdman. Yep, that sounds about what I would have done. It's we've had guys before that have built like pretty elaborate little bridges. Oh, and one other thing I want to get out of Jim. I noticed that at the bottom of Falls Point Road, it looked like Jim sent me a picture right at the bottom of Falls Point, which has been closed the last 3 years, so people have had to do big workarounds. Jim gets there this year, and he's probably thinking to himself, yes, Falls Point is open all the way down to the Selway River, then a nice, easy ride out the Selway to Lowell. He gets down at the bottom, and he sent me a picture. And there's this trench. I mean, it looks like the Suez Canal. It's this humongous trench that somebody built what looks like an enduro bridge over the top of it out of logs. And I'll get that picture I've already got the picture with Jim's permission. I'll post that up on the Facebook page. But that was, it's funny in retrospect, but when you're there at the time, it's probably not funny at all. One other thing for those of you who have not gotten the word yet is no Lac Chalage this year. There's no sense in doing it, and I may take it off for the future too. Lac Chalage is difficult for people to get into. It's a pain in the ass, and we may from now on just say you're going to be spending one night out on your tour. You're going to be sleeping under your bike one night. I've done that. Most of the time I've done the tour, I've ended up spending a night out, and it doesn't kill you. And it'll entail carrying a little bit more gas than I like out of Elk City, which is the reason we put Lac Chalage on there. But that whole thing, backtracking, going to Laksha, and people get in late and the rooms are lent out to somebody else. It's just, the people there are super nice, but it's kind of a pain in the ass to deal with. So next year I will at least give you the option of skipping Lac Chalage if you want to, and spending the night out if you want to. I think that may be a pretty good compromise. Also next year, based on what Jim has done, I may give you different routings up through there. That's the future of the tour anyway, sort of having days where you can take entirely different routes if you want to. And Jim helped me with that a lot this year. We talked about that. I said, look, can you ride down this trail just a little ways? I'll give you a point for doing it to make up for this point that was closed by fire. If you just ride down this trail for a couple miles and check it out. And he was always really glad to do that. Another awesome thing. I mean, how many people? It got a little bit more difficult to nudge him to do that stuff as the days went along, but he was really good about that. I'd say, well, check this out and tell me how it is, and he did it all. It was pretty awesome. All right, without any further ado, I want to bring in our guest tonight. And here he is. Can you hear us, Wayne?
I can hear you fine.
There he is. So, Wayne Wilson, class of 2020. I'm just going to turn it over to you. There's a big echo, by the way, that's coming from your system back there. I may have to mute my own mic to make it go away. So what I'll do, if you can turn my sound way down, that may help.
I'll see what I can.
Your microphone's really loud too. All right. That's better. A little bit. Well, I'll just mute my mic. Yeah, I'll mute my mic when you get going. But anyway, what I'm going to do is just ask you the same things I ask everybody. Just tell me a little bit about how you found out about the tour, what it was that made you think it was a good idea to go beat yourself with a bag of hammers for 10 days. You started out as a team last year, so talk about that a little bit. And then you had a really compelling story last year because you went from being a member of a two-person team to being a soloist. And your day 8 and 9 were quite adventurous. So just take us through the whole thing, what brought you here, take us through day by day, the dynamics of going from a team to solo, and tell us about your adventures on day 8 and 9. Take it away.
Hey, everybody. Thanks, Martin, for having me on. And Martin, thanks for doing this crazy thing we call the Tour of Idaho. It's the craziest, toughest, most insane thing that you'll ever love. Anything you've ever heard about how hard it is, if you haven't done it, you know it's tougher. It's the toughest thing I've ever done. How'd I find out? Well, my good friend Keith Webster up in Canada told me about the tour, and I see Keith is watching. So, hey, up in Canada, Keith and I started planning in 2019. Are we having some problems?
Wayne, I can hear you just fine. You're doing great.
Okay, I saw you wave, so.
I was waving at Keith Webster.
Oh. So Keith and I started planning in 2019. We realized it was kind of a one-year commitment. I got to watch the class of 2019 go through the tour, which was a lot of fun. The Holy Rollers were amazing. The Buckeyes were fun. Watched Jensen go through. I learned a lot watching everybody, and then became interested in preparing in 19. And I'm lucky enough in my old age to spend a little time in the winter down in Pahrump, Nevada. And I ride down there with my good friend Hans Christensen, and Hans is a retired firefighter. So I said, hey, Hans, do you want to join Keith and I on the tour? So we started out as a 3-man tour. And thanks again, Martin, for calling us Team Steel Horses. That was a cool name. Appreciated that, because we could have been little pink ponies or pygmies or something. So we appreciate the good name. So we started planning as a 3-man team, and I don't have to tell anybody how crazy 2020 was with COVID. And Keith couldn't make it across the border, so sometime about a month before the tour, when we knew he couldn't get across, we changed to 2-man. And I'm in Wyoming, which everybody knows is next to Idaho, but I couldn't be much further from Idaho and Pocatello. I'm up by Devil's Tower, stone throw from the Montana border and Sturgis, South Dakota. So Hans and I talked, and we decided, we probably ought to go over and do a little pre-running. So around the 18th of June, we went over and thought we'd pre-run, which was invaluable because we had no idea what we were getting ourselves into until we pre-ran. And as luck would have it, it rained about 2 inches the night before we were going to pre-run. Snowed up on Oxford Peak, snowed on Scout Mountain, and we got to go play in the mud on our pre-running. And we learned a lot of things. The first thing we learned is if Mother Nature doesn't cooperate, your tour's over, because there's gumbo before you get to Old Baldy. There's gumbo by the Cherry Creek campground, and I've never seen a bike ball up with mud like it did there. We spent an hour cleaning mud out of our bikes. And we got to Kent's Canyon on our pre-run, and Kent's Canyon in the rain and mud is a thing of legends, I think. And getting through Kent's Canyon was brutal. So we finally get out of Kent's Canyon and get to Downey and rest and recuperate and head out, and things are going pretty good. On our pre-run, we get to Harkness Canyon Road and try to go up to up that road there, headed up, and that was just slime. We went up and slid back down backwards and gave up and headed to Pocatello. So we didn't make a complete run on our pre-run, but we learned a ton. We learned how to do the navigation, which was nothing like we'd ever done. So with the benefit of pre-running at least 60% of day one, we went home and licked our wounds and prepared. And we came back on, I believe it was August 13th was our day one. We decided it was important to get there a day earlier, have a little time to rest and recuperate. We stayed at the Harkness Inn in McCammon, which was really cool. We got to take in a few of the local sites, and Hans and I liked Idaho a lot. We had fun. So we get to Malad the night before, excited as can be, managed to sleep a little, get up at 2:30 in the morning or something, and we're on our bikes by 3 per Martin's advice, which great advice, Martin. Thank you. Things went really good for a while. We were at the state line by 4, the rock slide by 5, and hit Oxford about sunrise, and it was cool. And things went really good on day one. Kent's Canyon, which had been brutal in the mud and slimy rocks where I couldn't stand up, we blew through that. Then it got pretty hot after that. So we stopped and rested a little, which, like Martin says, rest in the shade, take a few breaks. And we trekked on and went to McCammon to the Little Rock Cafe. Saw Teresa and had a great burger. Picked up a challenge point. And but by then it was about 105, but we rolled on up the hill and around to Chinese Peak and got into the flagpole about 7:15 or 7:30, and we had a great day one. Had a good day off in Pocatello. I learned from Jason Smoot that if you waterproof your boots, they stay pretty dry, and thanks to Jason, I had dry feet on the whole tour. So Jason, thanks, buddy. I need to get whatever he put on my boots. So day two, something Hans and I did all the time. We got early starts. We didn't always have early finishes, but we got early starts. We got an early start out of Pocatello, and a great single track flowing up on through, I believe it's Slate Creek or Slate Mountain up to Mink Creek.
Slate Mountain.
And it was great trails, but it was dusty. And Hans was in the lead. And this is, I guess, a lesson for everybody out there. I kind of hung back out of the dust, and I got a ways behind. And at some point when we got to Mink Creek Road, we got separated and a little confused and lost each other for a while. And the lesson there is, if we had it to do over again, we'd probably have some kind of radios, because we wasted some time because we lost each other and we had no communication. Part of that was our own fault. The radios would have helped. Um, the rest of day 2 went pretty good. One other minor separation we had, but soon we hit the desert, and Hans and I have ridden a lot of desert together, so we dispatched the desert pretty good. Got to Arco in time to eat at Pickles, had a good meal. Life was good. Day 3 started pretty good, other than I blew through the first challenge point. My fault, Hans. Sorry about that. And he had to wait for me to come back. And, got to Mackey, had a good breakfast. And that's when day 3 started getting a little tough, was after that. You know, we hadn't had a day off, and we rode a long time, and it was generally pretty uneventful, other than we made a few little mistakes. We did get to Smoky Bar Store before dark, had a nice meal with Kalen, and things were good. But for as early as we left, we probably got in a little later. So we were starting to get behind a little, and day 3 last year was a long, long day. Day 4, I let out a Smoky Bar Store in the morning and in the dark, and Kaylin didn't make us coffee at 4 a.m. We never saw her face, but she did make the best peanut butter and jelly sandwiches the world has ever seen that we packed along, and we ate those later in the morning, and they were fantastic. The coming out of Smoky Bar Store in the dark's maybe a good thing, because I'm told there's a lot of big drops. I really don't know, because it was dark and we didn't see anything till sunrise at the first challenge point, which I blew through again. Had to come back a little bit. Said to myself I wasn't going to do that anymore, learn from my mistakes. And we made another mistake shortly after the first challenge point that would have been maybe fixed by radios again. Hans was leading down off where we were going out down the switchbacks to drop the other side there, and I saw him turn what I thought was off the trail and look back as if the trail's not here anymore. And I looked at my waypoint, and it was behind me and my right, so I thought we'd missed a trail. So we go on a wild goose chase looking for a trail that's not there, when it turned out that Hans was actually on the trail. I didn't know it, and I just needed to follow him. So little mistakes like that happen, strange trails. We had no idea where we were. That was the beginning of our longest day, day 4. We rode from 4 in the morning till about 11 something at night. Between coming off the switchbacks and Sawmill Station, we ran out of water. We were coming down off of, I think it was Little Boulder, Big Boulder, to a trailhead, and there was a whole parking lot full of cars, but nobody was there, and nobody had any water. And there's a
Livingston Mill.
Yeah, some kind of a big camp there that says Trump on the roof.
Yeah, it's Livingston Mill.
Yeah, we looked all around there, and I had a life straw, and I don't know that I've heard a lot of talking about life straws, but good thing to have, because we'd have been in trouble without drinking out of the streams. So after being hot, out of water, hungry, we got to Sawmill Station. Met the owner of Sawmill Station, Ross Williams, I believe. Mm-hmm. And we probably talked to Ross a little too long, ate a little too much, drank a little too much, and we were a little late getting out of there. And one of the things we did right, and I did plenty wrong, but every day if we were going to pick up a bonus point or hit a challenge section, we kind of had a cutoff that if we're not here by X time, we're not going to do it, because we need to live to ride another day. Let's not do anything to bury ourselves. We did that on day 1 when we went down to Little Rock Cafe. We got there early enough. We went and got the easy bonus point, rested with Teresa where there was air conditioning, and then carried on. But day 4, we were unable to pick up any points because we were just too late and things hadn't gone great. Super long ride down into Chalice for us. We were up on the mountain in the dark. We were all probably wondering what was going on. Well, part of the time I was calling the hotel to make sure they didn't close up or leave our room, because I knew we wouldn't get there in time. So we did finally get a hold of somebody at the hotel, and they left the rooms open for us. So we got in, still tired, hungry, thirsty, at Chalice. Everything was closed, no food available. I had 2 bars of some kind, and we each ate one and went to bed. And I'm not sure what Hans thought when he went to bed, but we're probably both wondering if we were going to get up and do day 5. So we get up day 5, nothing's open till I think 7 o'clock. So we got a late start. Had to get food, fuel, bought a fluid. We wanted to do the challenge section on day 5. We kind of set our deadline to when we needed to be there. Had a good ride up to Twin Peaks Lookout. Funny thing, up at Twin Peaks, I always took the challenge point photos. And as I was taking the challenge point photo at Twin Peaks, Hans tripped backwards. So the live photo shows him there and falling backwards, and we laughed a lot and had a happy time up on Twin Peaks, and it was beautiful. The rest of day 5 went okay, but we weren't the sharpest. We weren't at our best. We were a little slow, made a few wrong turns, and long story short, didn't get to salmon before Les Schwab closed. Lucky for me, Josh was there working on his car, and I knocked on the door, and he came and saw me and got me some cold water and got some water for Hans. And Josh took care of us. It's a locally owned shop, family deal. Everybody stopped there. Great guy, great people.
Let me just interrupt you for a second, too. Once again, you make sure you take care of Josh when you go to Les Schwab. This guy is the goods. He's good people. He helps everybody out like he helped you guys out. There's almost nothing that guy wouldn't do for you guys. So make sure you take good care of him when you're there.
Well,
sorry.
I'll tell you how grateful I was. I gave Josh a $100 bill.
Good man.
And Josh looked at me like I was crazy and said, "No, you don't have to do that." And I said, "Yeah, I do. If you don't, you saved my bacon, buddy."
He's a good man.
And I got to say, I mean, skipping along the route a little, everybody along the route is great. Idaho is a super cool place. I'm still a little miffed that Kalen didn't get us any coffee, but peanut butter and jelly was good. So a little before we got into Chalice, we pulled over, and I could tell something wasn't right with Hans. And I said, "What's up?" And he says, "I'm done." And I knew what he meant. And I said, "Well, let's get into Chalice and at least stay alive and talk about it when we get there." So we get to Les Schwab and get some water, and I get a new tire, and Hans doesn't care about a new tire because he's done. And he dinged his knee on day 4 or 5 somewhere, and he just wasn't comfortable. And it had been a tough 2 days. And if you haven't been there, you don't know, but you've got to be pretty confident. You got to be comfortable on your bike. And if you got a bum wheel and things aren't right, if you're not comfortable, don't go. A few weeks ago, Martin talked about you got to know when to bail, and for Hans, that was when to stop. And this is where it gets kind of interesting, and this is where, I'm pretty transparent about all this. I'm an average guy, not much better, if any better than an average rider. Despite being lucky enough to go ride in Nevada in the wintertime, I have a job, and probably had not prepared for some things as good as I should have. And one of the things I really didn't prepare for was turning into a solo rider. Hans is a super strong rider, great guy. I knew it was possible, but I thought if we were going to go out, we'd go out together. We'd either succeed or win as a team, or go out as a team, you know. And I was pretty shocked, but I know my buddy Hans well enough. There's no change in his mind. He was done. I could tell in his eyes. And I'm thinking to myself, damn, what do I do now? So I at some point texted Martin and said, Hans is done. And a few minutes later, I said, I think I'm thinking about going on solo. What do you think? I might try it unless you talk me out of it. And Martin didn't try to talk me out of it at all. He said, go for it, dumbass. So then came the transition from a two-man team, kind of a beat up, tired two-man team to going solo. So we did what every team does when they split up. You go through your stuff and decide what to leave and what to take. Hans had the rescue kit, so I took the rescue kit from him, which meant leaving an extra pair of socks, one of my luxury items, meant leaving my MSR pack jacket, a couple other things. And I was pretty lean before, but when I went solo, I was super lean on what I was packing on the bike.
You guys were really good about that. You had one of the leanest rigs last year, which I think is a tremendous asset. The less weight you carry, the fresher you're going to be when you start getting deep into the tour. Jim Spooner did the same thing this year. I couldn't believe how Spartan his rig was, and that's nothing but a good idea.
Well, I remember when you interviewed us at Pocatello, I'm wearing this flimsy lightweight T-shirt, these lightweight shorts, and some shoes that barely weigh nothing because that's all I've got. And we didn't have much, so spare underwear are not necessary,
Nope. Buy it in Chalice if you need it, or buy it in Salmon. I don't carry anything. If I can get it along the route somewhere, I'm not carrying it until I need to buy it.
Well, and unfortunately for us, or for me, after that point, I didn't get a lot of places in time to buy anything. But
second half of the route's a little bit spare, but at least you don't have to carry it for 5 or 6 days.
Right. So I was lean. Other than my 3 to 6 liters of water and whatever food I packed. So when we divvied up stuff, I thought I had everything I needed. I was wrong, because Hans always carries his Oklahoma credit card, he calls it, which is a little siphon tube. And that was in his backpack, and I didn't think about it. So the siphon tube stayed with Hans when we parted ways. We split everything up, went and had a feast at Burger King there in Chalice, and had a beer together. And he got up the next morning early and wished me well. And I always appreciated him getting up. He might have even made me coffee, but anyway, and I got to say, starting out on day 6 alone, that was tough. I knew it was a remote day. I had not mapped out the solo route. Hans had mapped out some of the solo stuff, and he gave me his cards. And I should say we both did navigation. And if you're a 2 or 3 man team and everybody doesn't do navigation, you're out of your mind. Everybody needs to do navigation, and everybody needs to carry maps, paper maps. If I hadn't done my own navigation, and if I didn't have paper maps, I'd have been nowhere. So I head out of Salmon, the route kind of took me back the way I'd come in a little bit, and I've got pretty sparse waypoints from Martin on my GPS. And I get up close to a ridge top there that I don't remember, and I'm going the direction I know I need to go because I'm oriented, but things are not looking good, and I'm seeing kind of a little lake and trees across the road, and I'm thinking, if this is a trail, it's not good. So I hop a couple trees, probably 2 more than I should have, and I remember at some point watching, maybe it was an interview with the armadillos, where when they got in trouble up there on their tour ending stop, the discussion was, if you don't know where you are or where you're going, park the bike, get out and walk around. So I parked the bike. It was still pitch dark. I'm shining my spotlight around, and I'm damn near to ride off in a lake. And I don't really know where I am, but I get out my Garmin in reach and look at the map there, and I can figure out a little more that I need to go back and kind of make a horseshoe to get out of where I am. So I hop back over the logs, and I gotta say, my solo ride about ended before daylight on day 6. But the mistake I made was something I could recover from. I got back on the route, hit the waypoints, and from then, day 6 was fun. I say fun, but if you're gonna ride solo, you either have to be super competent, amazing rider, which I'm not, or you have to be somewhat okay with your own mortality. So I'm gonna go do my best, and it ends here. It ends here. It's Martin laughs because he's done it so many times. I'm in a remote area in a part of the country I've never been to before, and here's this 400 or 500 foot drop off to my left as I'm riding along this trail, and I'm thinking, what the heck am I doing out here? But I kept going. Made it through up on the Continental Divide area where that marker is in the rock pile. Beautiful up there. When it wasn't a giant drop off or something crazy, it was beautiful, cool country and a fun route. My route took me up to Stein Mountain. Saw a black bear going up through the canyon there along the creek, and got to Stein Mountain, and I'm thinking, oh, geez, I'm about done. And Martin's good at this. You think you're about done, and you look for your next waypoint, and the road's over here, and your next waypoint's in front of you down where you see no trail at all. And for a tired guy coming off the Stein Mountain, it was tough. It was a steep, narrow trail and some big rocks. But I rolled on. Actually got into North Fork in good time. Got there in time to get a burrito for supper and another one to take for breakfast, and I think some huckleberry ice cream. So North Fork's a great place. Had a little trouble with Wi-Fi at North Fork. One of the things
it sucks.
Prior to this point, I'd been really good about posting my challenge point shots. I thought that was important. I get to North Fork and I can get a text in or out, but I can't get anything to upload to Facebook. And occasionally the whole system goes down and crashes, and I think, well, I'm tired, I'll sleep. I can get them all made up tomorrow. So I didn't get my day 6 stuff in. And day 7 got an early start again. As I recall, I was in that creek crossing where you have to go up the creek in the dark, and had a lot of trouble finding where to come out. And thanks Jason Spoot, my boots were still dry and my feet never got wet. So, got through day 7 pretty good. there was a lot of trees down going up the ridge. Hopped some trees. Man, for all you guys out there that saw, thanks. You get up there, and Jim Spooner, I'm sure, feels the same way, although he saw more than I did. That there's a tremendous amount of sawing done, and when you do the ride, you're pretty thankful. So most of the rest of day 7 went pretty good, other than there was a detour at the end of the route going into Lowell that I made a mistake on and had to do, and eventually figured out the alternate route. I should go back to fuel, though, because this is where the fuel thing gets interesting. Elk City, I rode a 2016 Husky 501 mostly because I could put a 5.3 gallon tank on it, and I thought the big tank would be a help. And so I had the 5.3 gallon tank. I had a gallon in a fuel bag, and I had 2 1-liter bottles full of gas. Not exactly OSHA approved, but had those packed on too. So I left Elk City feeling like I had a lot of fuel. And I know I'm in for a long haul, so I'm nursing the bike a little by Anderson Peak or Anderson Lookout, whatever it is, Anderson Mountain there. And no matter how much I nurse it, it just seemed like the fuel's dropping. So to make a long story short, by the time I get close to Lowell, I feel like I'm not doing very good on fuel. So I see a couple motorhomes parked along the road. And I'll go visit these guys, see if I can bum some fuel. And there's these 2 old guys in their 80s that offer me a beer and some fuel. And I always remember this old guy's got a 2.5 gallon can of gas, and he's dumping it in, and it's getting kind of close to full. And I said, oh, that's enough. I'll have plenty, because I still had my gallon of gas in the fuel bag. And that's one of those what ifs. Geez, I wished I'd let him fill that all the way up. So with my almost top off and a gallon of fuel in my fuel bag, I think I'm good for fuel. I get to the Wilderness Inn in time, and actually get some food there, and Wi-Fi won't work again. So here I am behind another day on updating my Facebook posts.
And by the way, for those of you who are out there listening to this, we understand that. We know that the Wi-Fi is not great every place. It is, however, in Elk City, the post office happens to have world-class Wi-Fi. So I don't care about it in terms of challenge points and stuff. But if you need to get a message out besides through your PLB, just go stand outside the post office in Elk City, and it's really good Wi-Fi.
Well, and also I have AT&T on my cell phone, and if I were to do this again, not only would I probably have a radio if I was a team, I'd get a Verizon phone, because I think the coverage is far, far better.
Yeah.
So when I get to Elk City, this is where I became familiar with the term blowing bubbles, which I did not understand before. I thought I was okay. I thought I was rational. I got there before daylight, and by this time, I think, you know what, maybe I got a shot at this thing, because I got to tell you, when I left on day 6 and when I left on day 7, my attitude was just try to make another day. Honestly, probably didn't think I was going to make it, but partly after day 5, it's like, these 5 days have been one hard son of a gun. I'm not stopping. I mean, I'm not going to stop until something stops me. And so I just kept going. Didn't have sense enough to quit. But I get to Lowell, and every night I'd go through the route description, I'd get out the paper maps, I'd make notes on all the challenge points so I don't blow any, and decide my route and try to familiarize myself with where I am and where I'm going, and get it in my head. And so I've got to decide, do I take the solo route, which looks like a long ways, Ant Hill, or Sherman Creek? And I'd heard enough talk about Ant Hill that I'm thinking to myself, I don't want to do Ant Hill. If I'm going to abuse myself, I might as well do Sherman Creek if I've got to drag a bike up or something. And so I've got Martin saying, don't do Sherman Creek. You know, that's where Jimmy Lewis wrecked. And Ann saying, don't do Sherman Creek. What are you, nuts? But then I've got my buddy, the Buckeye, Jeremy Mack, saying, Sherman Creek wasn't that bad. You can do it. So I got, the devil on one side and a couple angels on the other. So I decided, well, I'm going to play it safe. I'll do the solo route. Live to ride another day. Don't do anything stupid. And that's when I figured out my brain blowing bubbles was incapable of plotting the route on the solo route. I couldn't understand it. I'd look at it and nothing made sense. So I went to sleep that night in Lowell not knowing where I was going the next day because I had plotted the 2-man route and the 3-man route. And I thinking, geez, it'd be nice to take that shortcut up Sherman Creek. So I wake up at, I think, 4:30 the next morning, and I look at the maps again, and after a few hours of sleep, guess what? My brain works again. So I guess this is something for everybody out there. Only when you have to do some type of critical thinking or planning do you realize that you got oxygen in your brain and it won't work or something, or a lack of oxygen in your brain. And so at 0:30 in the morning, I was able to plot the solo route, figure out where I was going, and off I went. And day 8 went pretty good for a while. Got to Fish Butte Trail. Was a little disoriented on which trail to take there for a little bit. Eventually got around and went around the butte where the hillbillies saw the mountain lion. I think I saw maybe a house cat there. That might have been what they were seeing too. Anyway, things are going good. Trails are pretty good. I see the road going off to Sherman Creek and avoid the temptation that Jeremy's saying, oh, it's not that bad. And off I go on the solo route. And even the solo route coming out of Fish Creek is pretty tough. The grass is tall. It was getting super hot. It's narrow. And I was pretty happy to get out of there and back on the solo route on the road. And from there, the solo route's long. You go back the way you came, hit the Lolo motorway. And up there, I see quads and side-by-sides. And by this time, I put my gallon of gas in from the fuel bag, and I'm thinking, this doesn't look good. And I stop any of those guys that I can find and try to bum gas. And one guy's got gas, but he's afraid he's going to run out, so he won't give me any. And the rest of them don't have gas. So I get no gas up on the Lolo motorway. And then off I go towards Windy Bill and Windy Ridge. And I was having a ball on those till I got to, funny the things you remember, waypoint 35. And I get to the trail going to Scurvy Mountain, and the waypoint's up in front of me. I'm thinking, well, I don't know what to do here. So I go up and try to hit the waypoint. It turns out it's up on the hill somewhere, and middle of the day, satellites are off. Things don't always work great. And I get out my maps and I read the route description again, and I read what I'm looking for, and I spend quite a bit of time studying the maps and trying to figure out what's going on. And finally decide it's got to be this trail, the Scurvy Trail. So I head down it, and my GPS is telling me I'm on the wrong trail. So I stop and look around, and I go back and look for trails. And long story short, I spent a lot of time back and forth on that trail looking for a little trail through the grass that wasn't there, and maybe found a really old trail that nobody's ridden in 100 years. But and eventually, it says I'm headed in the wrong direction, but eventually I actually crossed waypoint 36. And eventually I hit 37, even though the GPS must have been off because of the satellites. But I wasted a lot of time and, more importantly, a lot of fuel. So from there on, I get to scurvy and things are looking up. It looks like I'm going to get to that next campground past scurvy that I've heard Martin and Jeff Jensen talk about. But usually there's some campers that maybe you can bum some fuel. So I'm on the lookout for campers. And I see one Jeep with a tent and a couple girls and no sign of fuel. And I can't see anybody that looks like they've got fuel. And I'm kind of on cruise mode at this point, trying to stay out of the throttle and just keep it in a high gear and roll. And I never find fuel. So I just keep going, thinking, well, I'm not all that far from Loxa in my head. And it turns out it's kind of a long ways over the Lolo motorway to Loxa. And I get probably 30 or 35 miles from Loxa and the bike dies. And one side of the tank holds some fuel while the other runs out. So I lay it on its side, let the fuel run over. It fires back up, and I go into fuel conservation mode of ride it up hills, coast it down hills, push a little, get over a hilltop if you have to, saving fuel. And I get another 5-10 miles, whatever, and the bike dies again. And I do the same thing, put it on its side, and it fires again. So I go in stage 2 of fuel conservation, pushing, thinking, geez, how far can it be to Loxa? And go a little further and the bike dies again. And so I lay the bike over, and there's just practically nothing left for fuel on either side. And out of the corner of my eye, I see something shiny. And it turns out to be a almost brand new government Dodge pickup with some campers that were working for the Forest Service doing stream surveys. So I sputter my bike over there and talk to them, and they're, of course, this is COVID, so they're kind of, stay away, are you okay? And then eventually they figure out that I'm okay and start talking to me, and I tell them I'm out of fuel and what I'm doing, and they're like, shoot, we got a full tank of fuel if we can get some out. Well, where's the Oklahoma credit card that Hans had? And, we don't have it, so the government campers and I find a piece of tubing that we make a siphon hose out of and stick down the Dodge pickup, but we can't get anything to siphon because there's a siphon guard in it.
That's all new cars have that.
Yeah, all new cars. So by the time we get done trying to siphon fuel out, it's close to dark. And turns out they have a sat phone, but they're in lockdown. And the head lady said, you're welcome to stay here, but we're in lockdown because of COVID, and we have strict orders. We can't leave the camp. I said, do you think you could go look for some fuel for me? Nope, we're staying here. So that's when I think I sent a message to Martin saying, hey, I'm out of fuel. Things are fine. I've got a place to spend the night. Find fuel in the morning. Solve the problem. And maybe I didn't know about finding fuel in the morning, but I thought we were going to find fuel somehow. But turns out they can't leave. We can't get fuel out of anything. And my tank's just got virtually nothing in it. And I'm roughly 20 miles from Loxa, which is mostly downhill, but I didn't entirely know that at the time. The good thing is I got a pretty good night's sleep. Any of you guys that are worried about spending the night out on the ground, worried about a soft bed, if you make it to day 8, sleeping is the last of your problems. You can sleep on a rock. I laid down next to the bike, threw my coat over me. One of the girls camping there gave me another blanket, and I was out like a light. But the other thing I should tell everybody is I thought my tour was over because I was blowing bubbles again. I didn't remember the rules. I in my head thought I had to somehow get to Loxa that night. And so I went to bed at the end of my end of day 8 at Cayuse Junction thinking my tour was over. And I got to say I was okay with it. You know, I'd done my best. I didn't die. My bike wasn't at the bottom of some gully. I had my health and I was just out of fuel. So, you know, I'd failed, but I was okay with it. So
let me interrupt for just a second. The blowing bubbles thing is real because you and I had that conversation. And I remember saying, no, you're okay. You're okay. But you were so out of it. I don't think that you quite comprehended that I was telling you, you're just fine. It was some pretty chaotic text messages that were going back and forth there for a little while.
Yeah, the satellite, the Garmin works okay, sort of, but the messages are brief and slow.
Yeah.
So thank you for trying to tell me that. I mean, I really was blowing bubbles. I was out of it. I thought I was done. And I wake up the next morning and the light kind of comes on. Wake up at daylight, which was more sleep than I'd had in 7 days. So the extra sleep was nice. My brain worked again. I said, you know what? If I can figure out how to get back on course, I might still make it. At least I'm going to try. So I talked to Shayla, the head lady there at the stream survey, and said, hey, is there any way you can go look for fuel for me? And she said, and I said, you know, I've got some cash. You can, you know, if you can find a gallon of fuel anywhere for me, here's $50. And I'm handing her this $50 bill. And she's looking at me like, you out of your mind? $50 for a gallon of gas? And I think I handed her another 50 or something. I said, whatever it takes. And she realized I was serious, and she was a sweet young gal, and she and Kylie got permission from their supervisor to go look for gas, and they couldn't find any campers either. They ended up going clear to Loxa to get a gallon of fuel in my fuel bag. So I'm sitting there at Cayuse Junction, and I just said, well, I might as well start pushing the bike and land it over. So I push and run a little bit, and I get down the road 5 or 10 miles maybe. I don't even know. And I see them coming back with the fuel bag, and geez, they don't keep my money. They give me change for everything. And
that's
I get
awesome.
fuel, and I thank them profusely, and off I go. So I finally get to Loxa, and it's, geez, close to 10 o'clock in the morning by the time I finally get there. And I'm hungry and out of fuel. And also remember I'd promised Martin that I'd catch up on my posting. So I go into Loxa and have a super good breakfast, some biscuits and gravy and eggs like I've not seen for a week. And while I'm eating breakfast, I update all my posts to Facebook. And by the time I'm done eating and posting and get gas in, I think it's like 11 o'clock or something in the morning. And off I go. I think I told somebody, tell Donna to leave the lights on for me because it's going to be a late one. So I headed back, picked up the Lundy Ridge challenge point. The day was kind of a blur. I think that might have been my best day of not missing turns and doing good navigation most of the day. Heller Divide was fun. Got up to Heart Lake, which, right on there should be a memorial to Jeff Jensen because
We're
Jeff,
taking care of that. That's in the works.
We might all drive up that hill because it really looks like a trail. So things are going pretty good, but by the time I get to the cliff view, I can feel I'm fatigued, and the trail's not letting up. Day 9's still tough. So I keep going, and as I get close to Stevens Peak, the trail gets narrow, and there's a lot of what, thanks to Mike Knight, I know is bear grass, and it's hard to see the trail. And for some reason, I thought the challenge point for Stevens Peak, you had to go up that little trail closer to the peak where the gravel road is, which I was wrong. So I'm on the trail. I go off route up to where I think the challenge point photo is supposed to be taken, and then mistakenly think I can follow that road back down to the next waypoint. And I was wrong. I had to go back the way I came down that little trail, rejoin the narrow little cow trail or antelope trail with bear grass on it, and head towards Wallace. And by this time I'm tired and it's still hot. You know, the sun went down as I was up on Stevens Peak, but it still seemed like it was 90 degrees. And I was sweating and about out of water. And I remember going along that road past Stevens Peak. I'm on this narrow trail, and here's this rock in the middle of the trail that's flat and about 3 feet long, not big enough for the wheelbase of the bike to get up on. And there's tracks down off the side of it where you can see all these people slid halfway down the hill, or not halfway down, but at least 10 feet down the hill, and struggled to get their bikes back up. And I'm thinking, gee, I better hit this right and bounce up over this thing, or it's going to be ugly. And well, I called it. It was ugly. The bike, I didn't wreck. The back wheel slid down, and the bike slid down about 4 feet below this big rock on the trail. And if there would have been something to tie to, I would have got out the rescue kit, but there was nothing to tie to. So it's dark. I'm sweating. It's 90 degrees, I think. And I can't get my back up on the trail. But I just keep working at it. And, I pull the front end up a few inches, and I pull the back end up a few inches. And I think, geez, it'd really be great if I'd end up on the west side of this big rock instead of the east side. But there's no way I can get it up on the west side. So after 30 or 40 minutes of pulling and pushing and sweating and all, I get it back up, and I'm where I started before I made the ugly departure. It's like, all right, you gotta hit it right, kind of all or nothing here. So I hit it and popped the front wheel up and the back wheel up, and up I went over the rock and back onto the trail. And I stopped and breathed hard for a while and sweated and said, wow, glad that's over. And from there to that rocky RV road, I was shot. I was out of water. I was sweating. I had to stop every 5 or 10 minutes and kind of rest. So I was kind of shot. And then I finally got off that narrow trail onto something that at least is a little wider, and eventually an ATV trail. And after that little narrow trail with the rock, those ATV trails were great. I didn't really care about the big rocks and slides and stuff. So got into Wallace, amazingly, by roughly 10:30. Donna was there, had a sandwich for me. Life was good again. So I knew about day 10. I knew I was probably in trouble for bonus or having enough points, or at least I was close. So I knew I had to take that challenge section on day 10. So I did that, and I rode the three-person variation on that day, which I'm not sure mattered, but I did everything I could on day 10 because it was all or nothing. And day 10 went pretty good. No mishaps. Got to Sundance Mountain, and it was the biggest relief I've ever felt. The journey was over. So I you know, texted everybody and posted on Facebook, and the guard from the tower came down and said congratulations. And by this time he knew about the tour, and we visited a little bit, and so everything was done, and I sat down on a rock there. This must have been like 3:30 in the afternoon, and I woke up 2 hours later. I was so exhausted that I just fell asleep sitting on a rock on top of Sundance Mountain. So you can sleep anywhere.
That's true.
And when I saw Jim Spooner yesterday, I remembered that. He looked exhausted. So Jim, way to go, buddy. Way to go. That was pretty special.
Wayne, thank you very much for telling your story. The individual stories that people have to tell about the Tour of Idaho is the best part of the Tour of Idaho. Just listening to everybody's experiences, they're all a little bit different. And your trip, like a lot of trips, was really unique because of the obstacles that you had to overcome. Again, if everything's sawed and there's no fires and you don't run out of gas and you got your nav dialed, it's still an accomplishment. But it's way more of an accomplishment when you have a lot of obstacles that you have to overcome. And your tour was one of those tours last year. That gasoline thing nearly knackered you. You had to spend the night out, but you got through it. You figured it out.
Well, big things are live to ride another day. Don't make any mistakes that are going to bury you, and just think through everything on the fly.
There you go.
Good decisions out there.
All right. We're about out of time tonight. We went way over, and I got kids upstairs that are yelling at me to come up and play with them before they go to bed. So I got to rock and roll. Again, Wayne, thank you very much. I can't wait till we get together again sometime sooner rather than later, I hope. It was awesome watching you last year, and it's awesome hearing your tale again. And it's one that I think everybody needs to hear. So congratulations. What was your number?
75.
75. And so you were middle of last season, and Jim just got 79. So, again, there were a bunch of people that showed up to do the tour last year. And I think last year might have been the best year ever. I think we had 11, 12 finishers or something like that. It was an extraordinarily high number, but we had an extraordinarily high number of teams last year. This year we're down one or two in the number of teams. We have about as many riders because there's a lot of 2- and 3-person teams this year. But all of you should listen to not only what Wayne's telling you, but what Mike and Brent told you, what Jim's going to tell you. All these people have a story that's unique, but the thing that's common to all of these stories is how often did you want to stop? Wayne, how often did it occur to you that it might be a good idea just to bag this thing? You're sitting there somewhere and you're going, I think I may have had enough. Did that thought cross your mind every once in a while?
I don't know why. I was very driven. I wasn't going to quit until something took me out. Whether
there you go.
Whether
determination,
it was fuel or a wreck or whatever, something had to take me out. I wasn't stopping.
That's it. Determination. Then there are going to be times when you think it's all over, and it ain't over till it's over. It's not over until day 11 goes by and you're not sitting at Sundance Mountain. You can always keep going. You figured out your deal with gas. Jeff Jensen figured out a way to winch his bike 800 feet back up a side hill. Jim sawed, I don't know how many hundreds of trees in his tour. Where there's a will, there's a way. And as long as you can keep going, even if you're going slow, as long, as you can keep moving north, you got a chance. That's what it takes.
Well, I'm not very smart, so I learn something every day. And one of the biggest things I learned from Jim Spooner is you can't underestimate physical condition. I was apparently in adequate shape to get through the tour. I think Jim was in excellent shape, and I think that was critical. And it's always interesting to hear everybody's stories. Like Stephen Hall's was great last week,
yep.
But physical conditioning, it's got to be key.
Jim Spooner can throw you, me, and half the people watching this broadcast tonight over the roof of my house. He is a pretty fit looking dude. He's an athletic trainer, and evidently he doesn't want to ever walk into a weight room and have anybody laugh. So yeah, he's pretty fit. Wayne, thank you very much. We're gonna wrap it up tonight. I really appreciate you coming on, and we'll be getting together soon. Maybe down in Pahrump this winter sometime.
We'll count on it. We'll make Jimmy buy us a beer.
Uh, Man, if you can get beer out of that rascal, I'm always the one buying the beers. I can never figure out
Hey,
how it
hey,
works that way.
hey, can I tell you a quick Jimmy story if we have a minute?
Sure.
So first time I ever meet Jimmy, I'm kicking around the Mojave Desert, and I like Mexican food. So I'm eating some Mexican food and having a drink at the Romero's bar down there in Pahrump. And these two guys walk in, and one of them says, "Hey, is that your BMW out there?" And I said, "Yeah, I was riding a BMW GS Adventure. You care if we look at it?" And I said, "Yeah, go ahead." So they go out and come back in, and the bearded guy starts asking me questions about the bike and a few things and what I'm doing there. The other guy's kind of ignoring me. And I said, "Well, I've been into Vegas today. I'm looking for a GPS for my dirt bike." Well, then the other guy's ears pick up, and he says, "I might be able to help you with that. What are you looking for?" So it turns out it's Jimmy Lewis, and tells me I need a Trail Tech Voyager Pro. And he says, "So what are you going to do with it?" I said, "Well, we might make a run at the Tour of Idaho." And I'll never forget this look at me. And he says, "That's tough. It's for real. That's no joke." And partly he thinks I'm some dude on a GS12.
Yeah.
But partly I will never forget that look because I've gotten to know Jimmy better since then. Jimmy has a great amount of respect for how hard it is. And when Jimmy tells you it's hard, you know it's tough. However, all you guys out there, be ready. However hard you think it is, it's tougher.
Again, I texted Jimmy just the other day and thanked him again, as I usually do once or twice a year anymore. Jimmy is what really put this thing on the map. That video that he made, and it instantly changed the character and the quality of people that we had showing up. Because before then, according to Adventure Rider, of course you can do it on a GS 1100. And so we get all these guys that would show up on bikes that were too big and hadn't done their preparation. They don't know the first thing about navigation, and they just get their clocks cleaned, and then they gripe about it. They just bitch all over the internet. And then Jimmy comes along and he does that video, and he's telling people right to their face exactly what he told you. No, this thing is for real. It's different. It's its own kind of thing. If not for Jimmy, I would have quit this a long time ago, because Jimmy completely changed the makeup of the rider community in this group. All of a sudden, we had people showing up that had the right skill sets to be successful. And that was that. Before, that was the exception rather than the rule. And now the rule is most people that show up kind of have an idea of what they're getting into. They still don't know how hard it is, because you can't know that until you've experienced it. But they have an idea that it's going to be hard. It's not just like a slightly technical BDR route or something. All right, man. Wayne, take care of yourself, brother. I'll talk to you later, okay?
All right. Bye, everybody.
Okay. So, once again, you've wasted another perfectly good hour of your life that you can't get back on a PBR Monday. And I didn't even drink any PBR tonight, but the good news is I'm near the end of my keto diet. I've lost 30 pounds, and I think I can start squeezing in the occasional PBR and moonshine on Monday night these days. I think when I go to North Fork this weekend, if that's where I end up, I'm going to take a case of PBR with me and celebrate my days of sawing. It's been a long journey for me. Last year was not the best year health-wise. Hip replacement, kidney stones, and all that stuff, but I got myself in pretty good shape now, and I'm looking forward to actually start riding for real again. So we'll see how the next few days goes and how this weekend goes. But I will. There will not be a PBR Monday next Monday night, because I'll be in North Fork. So no PBR Monday next week, but we'll get right back on the schedule after that. I had some guests lined up for next week as well, but I'll have to call those guys up. We'll try to get them on the following week. It was another team last year that has a story like Wayne. Started out as a duo, two young kids that were really strong, and ended up as a solo. And we'll get those guys on in a couple of weeks. So again, thanks very much for spending the time tonight. For those of you that are starting out next week, best of luck. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody, and I'll be seeing all of you in a couple weeks. Ciao.